have Little Piggy's roster?
I do. I'm just trying to make sure I can get everybody admitted. So hang tight. Little Piggy's roster. I do. Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay. All right, he comes in. Peter does. Okay, there's the timer. Oh, the witnesses. Eris is a witness. That's why. All right, Eris. Josh, Mia. Kendrick Chen is admitted. Oh, there he is. Here's the timer. Cami Soros. Cami Soros is admitted. Jimmy Terry's admitted. James Karani gets admitted. Sia Kavi gets admitted. All right. And Burns. Lila gets admitted. I need Tim Reynolds. Didn't already admit Ashley. Is there? What about Josh Moore? Can I get one of the attorneys for Miss Piggy to unmute?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hi, Tyler. Tyler, it looks like I'm missing some folks. Is Josh Moore?
Yes, Your Honor. Josh Moore is here.
Yes. Okay. He's linked up with Kyle Cusack. Okay.
Your Honor, they are also the trial tech.
They're also what?
The trial tech, Your Honor.
Okay. So when you take a look in there, you see everybody that you need to have, right? 3 witnesses, 3 lawyers, and a timekeeper.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Thank you, Tyler. Can I get one of the attorneys for, and by the way, Tyler, you're the prosecution for this round, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Can I get one of the attorneys for Rizzo to please unmute?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hi, is it Kavi?
It's Senna.
Senna? Okay, how do you say your last name?
Kavi.
Kavi, okay.
Yeah.
So I think I see a Michaela Karani who wants to be admitted, but I don't see her on your,
Oh, yes, Your Honor. We have her down as Kayla Corain in the roster.
okay, that's the same person?
Yes, sir.
Okay, she's admitted. And then Haley Weintraub, I need to admit her. Okay. So I don't have anybody waiting. Can you tell me, Ms. Kavi, do you see all 3 of your lawyers and all 3 of your witnesses and your timekeeper in the virtual courtroom?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Now I need to make sure I have all of the judges. I know Ms. Terry is in the virtual courtroom. Ms. Soul is in the virtual courtroom. I'm looking for Tim Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds? So I think we're waiting on one judge. So just be patient with me for a minute. Mr. Graham or Ms. Cobby, I've got one person in the waiting room named Emily McDonald. Is she an active participant on your team or a timer for the round today?
She is not an active participant, but she is on our prosecution, so
Okay, so she's gonna have to watch it on YouTube.
yes, Your Honor.
And of course, you know. Hi, Laura, it's Judge Mulvihill. Hi, so I'm looking for Tim Reynolds. Is he anywhere? Okay, we got everybody else ready to go, so. Yep, okay, that's the last one I'm waiting for. Thank you. We just be a minute, folks. If you look after you connect, look right there, it'll say live on custom live streaming service. Yeah. So that way, other team members, parents, everybody can watch the actual trial. Okay. Hi, Laura. Hi, Laura, what's going on?
Okay, it looks like, I'm sorry, that was Tim O'Neill who was going in. I'm looking for Tim Reynolds right now. So we'll give him about 3 minutes, and if not, we'll just have you score if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, we're gonna try and find him though, because I know there's a lot of other stuff going on. So let me go look for him, and I will be right back.
All right, thank you. Let me know.
Judge Mulvihill, he is on his way in now.
Thank you, Laura. Mr. Reynolds, can you hear me? Mr. Reynolds, can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me.
How's that? Can you hear me now, Judge?
Now I can hear you.
Excellent, thank you.
Laura, are you there?
Laura's not, but Kyle is. Did you have a question, Judge?
Hi, Kyle. No, we just found Mr. Reynolds and he finally got connected. So I think we've got everybody and we're good to go.
Cool. And I will keep an eye on the YouTube. So once again, it looks like it's streaming already. So I think you are good.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, mock trial participants, let's go ahead and get started. Let me ask the prosecution if they're ready for trial.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is the defense ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
The trial roster with the team's code has been provided to me. Did the scoring judges each get that? Mr. Reynolds? You're muted.
I did not, Your Honor.
Okay. How about you, Ms. Terry?
No, Your Honor.
And Ms. Saul, you just have Rizzo. You don't have, well, Rizzo is the defense. So you need the prosecution. Okay. So here's what you're going to need to do, judges. When the team members introduce themselves, you'll need to make notes so that you can keep track of which member of which team is playing which part. So teams, what that means is when I ask you to introduce yourselves, I'm going to need you to do it slowly and spell out some names so that the scoring judges can get the information. If anyone is planning to tape this round, you need to understand that you need to have approval from both teams before you can do that. I need to inform the teams that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs of the competition during the round. And I think what that really means is they may be taking screenshots of the participants during the trial. And team participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission in the use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. There should be no one else in the courtroom other than the presiding judge, 3 scoring judges, and 7 members from each team. 3 attorneys, 3 witnesses, and 1 scorekeeper. If there's anyone other than those people in the virtual courtroom, you need to leave immediately. I need to remind the teams that no recesses will be allowed with the exception of any that are necessary for a health emergency. But particularly, you're not allowed to have a recess between the end of witness examination and the beginning of closing argument. I do have discretion if we need to stop the trial for a technical reason, I can do that. And there are provisions within the rules for how much time we can apply to a technical matter. I'm going to ask each of the team members and the scoring and the timer to turn on your video for just a minute because I want the scoring judges to take a look at all the participants because I need to ask each scoring judge if they have any reason to be biased in judging either team. Mr. Reynolds, any reason to be biased in judging either team?
No, Your Honor, I have no reason to be biased.
Ms. Terry, any reason to be biased in judging either team?
No, Your Honor, no reason to be biased.
Ms. Soul, any reason to be biased in judging either team?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. I need to remind the teams and that any disputes that rising out of this competition have to be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I need to remind the teams that their compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. At this time, I'm going to ask each side to introduce the participating team members. Let me start with the attorneys for the prosecution, Team Miss Piggy.
All right. Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Jamie Williamson, and I will be giving the opening statement, conducting the direct examination of Alex Fuentes, and also conducting the cross of Taylor Perkins.
Thank you, Ms. Williamson.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Peter Von Elkenis, and I'll be conducting the direct examination of Kyle Kuzak and the cross-examination of Professor Blake Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Tyler Graham, and I will be conducting the closing statement, the direct of Detective Jordan Markowitz, and the cross of Avery Becker. At this time, we would ask permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves.
Yes, please. Let me make sure, though, that the scoring judges, if you're not able to keep up, just let me know, and I'll ask the team members to repeat their name and role. Witnesses for the prosecution.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Eris Wharton, and I am Detective Jordan Markowitz.
Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Josh Moore, and I am Kyle Kuzak.
Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Mia Von Minden, and I am Alex Cifuentes.
All right. Thank you, Miss Piggy. For the defense, Team Rizzo, would the attorney please introduce themselves?
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Senna Kavi. I will be conducting the opening statement, the direct examination of Avery Becker, and the cross-examination of Detective Jordan Markowitz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is JP Corain, and I'll be performing the direct examination of Taylor Perkins and the cross-examination of Kyle Kuzak.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Cameron Sars, and I will be giving the closing statement, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Professor Blake Van Owen and the cross-examination of Alex Cifuentes. Your Honor, at this time, we now ask permission for our witnesses to introduce themselves.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Haley Weintraub, and I am Avery Becker.
Good afternoon. My name is Ashlyn Corain, and I am Jordan Markowitz.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Kayla Corain, and I am Blake Van Owen.
Ashlyn Corain, I had you as Taylor Perkins.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Your defense this round, so.
Okay.
So which witness are you?
I would be Taylor Perkins.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ashlyn Corain is witness Taylor Perkins. All right. At this time, I need to swear in the team members, the gallery, the scoring panelists, and the witnesses. At this time, team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? You can nod affirmatively. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Okay. Gallery members, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Finally, would the scoring panelists please raise their right hands? Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
All right, thank you. Are there any preliminary matters on behalf of the prosecution?
Yes, Your Honor. We ask that the stipulated facts be constructively read into the record.
Any objection by the defense?
No, Your Honor.
That request will be granted.
Your Honor, we ask that the exhibits be shown by screen share as they are being authenticated by the witness and that they are constructively not shown to the jury.
I'll grant that request. As a practical matter, that's how you're going to have to do it.
All right, Your Honor.
But make sure that once an exhibit is admitted, that you actually ask to have it displayed to the jury constructively.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
We also ask that the exhibits be deemed to be published to the jury upon being admitted into evidence.
You were ahead of me, having thought that out. I'll grant that request as well.
All right, and finally, we ask that any time left on closing arguments be reserved for rebuttal.
I'll grant that request. Does the defense want the same procedure?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other preliminary matters on behalf of the defense? Ms. Covey?
Yes, Your Honor. We ask for permission for the timekeepers to stay with their cameras on at all times.
That request will be granted for both teams.
No further stipulations, Your Honor.
All right. At this time, we'll hear opening statements on behalf of the prosecution. Ms. Williamson.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court? Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Jamie Williamson, and I, along with my co-counsel, Tyler Graham and Peter Bon Alcanis, are here today representing the state of Colorado in this case in which the defendant is facing murder in the first degree and burglary in the second degree. On Friday, March 6th, 2020, Mackenzie Brackman was found dead in the doorway of his home, having been stabbed in the back. Mr. Brackman was many things: a good man, a defense attorney, and an amazing mock trial coach who dedicated the majority of his time into making his students the best they could be, both in and outside the courtroom. Sadly, his time was cut short by one of his very own students. Seeking revenge for being kicked off the mock trial team, Avery Becker went to Mr. Brackman's home that day, just looking for some petty vandalism. But due to a series of unforeseen events, that Mr. Brackman would end up with a knife in his back. Nothing provokes vengeance like pride. The defendant was in her senior year at high school, and Mr. Brackman had been her coach for 2 years. Witnesses on both sides of the case will testify to Avery Becker's terrible relationship with Mr. Brackman and with Mr. Brackman. Ms. Becker would show up unprepared and late, and because of it, Ms. Becker and Mr. Brackman would fight at almost every mock trial practice. It was the trophies and the praise that built up Ms. Becker's ego. So when she had finally been kicked off the mock trial team for a terrible attitude, vengeance was the only thing on her mind. And nothing provokes vengeance like pride. Today, the prosecution will call 3 witnesses, 2 experts, and 1 student with first-hand knowledge of both the defendant and the victim. First, you will hear from Jordan Markowitz, the lead detective in this case. Detective Markowitz will discuss what he first noticed when entering the crime scene, how he used cell tower data to place the defendant at Mr. Brackman's home, and how he came to identify the main suspect, Avery Becker. Next, you will hear from Kyle Cusack, a crime scene reconstructionist expert. Mr. Cusack will show how scuff marks on the floor, broken household items, and the nature of the wound and blood splatter all indicates a burglary gone wrong, not a planned murder. Finally, you will hear from Alex Fuentes, a good friend of Ms. Becker's and also a fellow mock trial participant. Ms. Becker will testify the relationship between Ms. Becker and Mr. Brockman, Ms. Becker's prior vandalism of Mr. Brockman's car, and text messages that she received from Ms. Becker clearly stating her intent to break into Mr. Brockman's home and vandalize it. It was Ms. Becker's ego and it was Ms. Becker's pride and need for vengeance that got her to Mr. Brockman's back door that day. However, it was her habit of being unprepared and acting on the spot that got the knife in Mr. Brockman's back. The prosecution will prove that there is no reasonable doubt regarding where the guilt lies in this case. Today, the defense will call 3 witnesses: the defendant, the defendant's best friend, and an expert who has only ever testified for the defense. Their case will rely on conspiracy theories alone. Today, the prosecution holds the burden of proof, which means that we will have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Ms. Becker is guilty of murder in the 1st degree and burglary in the 2nd degree. The prosecution will win by presenting facts and logic, rather than trying to find backdoor answers to questions that have already been solved. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Opening statement on behalf of the defense, Ms. Bobby.
Yes, Your Honor. Missing suspect, missing evidence, missing motive. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, a case that is based on assumptions and missing evidence is not one that can lead to a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt. The prosecution failed to consider the holes in their case that point to other directions. Missing motive. Avery Becker is a former Colorado high school student and successful mock trial team member. There were times in which she disagreed with her coach, Mackenzie Brockman, one of which resulted in her vandalizing her coach's car, an action that she later regretted. She wanted nothing more than to apologize to her coach, but she never got the chance to do so. On March 6th, 2020, Mackenzie Brockman, the Colorado high school mock trial team's coach, was found dead, stabbed in the doorway of his home. He had been stabbed by an unknown intruder. The prosecution will tell you that Avery killed Coach Brockman after going to his home with the intent to vandalize it. They will first point to Ring home security videos that show a masked and gloved intruder. They will then point to cell phone records showing Avery's phone in the vicinity of Mackenzie Brockman's home at the time leading up to and around the murder. Finally, they will point to screenshots of text messages supposedly sent to Avery Becker's teammate Alex Fuentes stating intent to vandalize the coach's home. Missing evidence. The evidence will show that Avery spent the day of March 6th with her friend Taylor Perkins looking for her missing phone. A phone that was likely stolen by another person. Missing suspect. The prosecution built a case off of videos that do not even show the intruder's face, text messages that were sent into the police department through screenshots from Avery's jealous teammate, and a crime scene reconstruction that jumps to conclusions. Today, you will hear from Avery Becker, who will testify to the events leading up to and on the day of March 6th. You will also hear from Taylor Perkins, Avery's friend, who will testify to Avery's whereabouts and relationships. Then you will hear from Blake Van Owen, who will bring into light the aspects of the investigation that were overlooked by the prosecution. Members of the jury, the prosecution has the burden of proof in this courtroom today. They must prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Avery Becker broke into Mackenzie Brockman's home on March 6th with the intent to commit a crime and left having committed first-degree murder. This requires for you to not have any reasonable doubt that this crime was committed. The evidence that the prosecution will present today will not overcome this high burden. There is a missing suspect, missing evidence, and missing motive. Therefore, you must rule that Avery Becker is not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the prosecution please call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
Detective, you've already been sworn. Go ahead, Mr. Graham.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
I am Detective Jordan Markowitz, and I'm a homicide detective for the Denver Police Department.
Detective, how long have you been with the Denver Police Department?
13 years.
And of those 13 years, how long have you been a homicide detective?
7 of those.
And have you ever gotten any special certifications with the DPD?
Yes, I hold a cell phone data and forensic data recovery certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
And what did you have to do to get that?
I completed an in-depth 3-day training course and passed a certification test.
And what did you learn in this training?
I studied all types of cell phone and data and records, as well as how to download data from a cell phone using forensic software. Furthermore, I also learned how to inquire and interpret cellular data.
And have you utilized this training in your job?
Yes, I have analyzed over 100 phone records, as well as testified in over 50 cases involving cell phone technology.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, I would like to enter Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in the fields of cell phone technology, forensic data recovery, and homicide investigation.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. You have a cell phone, sorry, you have a cell phone technology and forensic recovery certificate?
Yeah, that is what I said. It's coming very handy for me. I'm well qualified in the field.
And to get the certificate, you completed a 3-day training course?
Yes, I did. I also passed a certification test certifying my ability to do it.
Thanks. Your Honor, based on Rule 702A, I object to the qualifications of Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in cell phone data and forensic data analysis due to his lack of education in the field.
Mr. Graham, do you want to respond?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, you can enter an expert under multiple fields, one of them being experience, and Detective Jordan Markowitz has testified to his numerous cases and experience under these fields, and as such, he should be entered.
The overruled court finds that is qualified to opine as an expert. You may continue with your examination, Mr. Graham.
Detective, why are you here today?
I am here to give my full report regarding the murder of Mackenzie Brackman.
And were you on duty Friday, March 6th of 2020?
I was.
What happened that afternoon?
Well, I was called in to say that I needed to go investigate a homicide at 444 Flower Street.
And what did you do when you arrived?
Well, I immediately noticed a body laying in a pool of blood just past the threshold with a knife lying beside it. I also happened to notice a Ring camera doorbell next to the door.
And would you recognize this view if I displayed it to you?
I most certainly would.
Trial Tech, please display Exhibit 1 to the court. Detective, is this a fair and accurate representation of the view of Mr. Brackman's house?
It is.
Your Honor, I would like to move to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
1 will be admitted.
Detective, what does this picture show?
Well, it shows the body of Mackenzie Brackman as well as the Ring camera doorbell.
Trial Tech, could you please highlight the stab wound on Mr. Brackman's body? Now, Detective, what is the significance of where the stab wound is placed?
Well, he was stabbed in the back on the shoulder and he is facing towards the door. This shows that he was attempting to flee when he was stabbed in the back.
Trial Tech, would you please highlight the Ring camera video system? Now, Detective, were you able to recover this Ring camera footage?
I certainly was.
Trial Tech, please remove Exhibit 1 from the scene. Detective, what did these ring camera videos show?
Well, they showed a suspect, an intruder of average height and build, just like Avery Becker.
Now, did you do further investigating of the house?
I did, yes.
And so what happened next in your investigation?
Well, when I got done looking at the front door area, I saw there was an unlatched back gate. So I went into the backyard and noticed the back door was opened. So I entered the domicile from there.
And when you entered the house, what did you see?
Well, I stepped into the kitchen, and next to it was a dining room where there was a toppled chair and a shattered plate. I also noticed a knife block in which the largest knife was missing, and the knife drawer was open.
And Detective, would you recognize pictures of the knife block and knife drawer if I display them to you?
I would, yes.
Trial Tech, please display Exhibits 7 and 8 side by side. Detective, can you identify these pictures to the court?
Yes, this is the knife block and the open knife drawer I was just previously talking about.
Your Honor, the witness has authenticated and identified these two exhibits, and I would like to move them into evidence.
No, Your Honor.
7 and 8 will be admitted.
Trial Tech, please display Exhibit 9. Detective, can you tell the court what this picture is?
Yes, this is the dining room I was talking about, and this specifically is a picture of the shattered plate.
Now, Detective, why are these photos significant?
Well, the shattered plate shows that there was a struggle, and the missing knife from the knife block and the open knife drawer indicate a knife was grabbed. So it can therefore be concluded that this was spontaneous. Someone didn't just bring a knife in and murder Brackman. The knife was sourced from the house. So this wasn't premeditated, and it indeed was a burglary gone wrong.
Now, Detective, what did you do next in your investigation?
I divulged the contents of Mr. Brackman's cell phone to learn more about him, and I learned about a program called Mock Trial.
Did you think mock trial had anything to do with the case at the start?
Well, not initially, but it actually ended up giving me the biggest break in this case.
And what was that break?
I interviewed the students that Mr. Brackman coached, and the first one I interviewed, Alex Fuentes, gave me a lead.
What was this lead?
I was shown evidence that Miss Becker had intent to go break in and trash Mr. Brackman's home.
So did you investigate Miss Becker?
I indeed did. I attempted to set up an interview. However, Miss Becker lawyered up, so I was unable to accomplish this.
So since she lawyered up, what did you do next?
I obtained a warrant to look through her cell phone records, and I actually obtained a lot of data in the form of CDRs.
And what are CDRs?
CDRs are call detail records. These essentially show times and cell tower location of when someone receives or sends cell phone communications.
So would you clarify what you collected from Avery Becker's phone?
Yes. On her way to Mr. Brackman's home, I was able to see when she received certain pings from specific cell towers on the route towards Mr. Brackman's home. I actually assembled a map that'll clarify this a lot better.
Now, Trial Tech, would you please display Exhibit 16? Detective, can you identify this to the court?
Yes, this is the map I put together.
Your Honor, the witness has authenticated and validated what has been previously marked as Exhibit 16, and at this time I would move to enter it into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
16 will be admitted.
Trial Tech, would you please highlight the before-mentioned path? Now, Detective, can you clarify what this shows?
Well, if you see these little black spoke things, those are the cell towers. They have 3 antennae, which each cover an 120-degree arc. These arcs are in red, and Miss Becker's phone sent communications to each of those cell tower antennas at times along the route. That route matches up with the times and the cell towers that are pinged as she was traveling down to Mr. Brackman's house.
Now, Detective Charles Eck, please remove this exhibit from the court. Detective, given all your investigation in this case, can you conclude what happened on March 6, 2020 in your expert opinion?
Yes. So these cell phone records show for sure that Miss Becker was at Mr. Brackman's home that day. She tried the front door first. However, the Ring camera doorbell, that took footage and it actually sent an alert to Mr. Brackman. Mr. Brackman grabbed a knife to defend himself, hence the open knife drawer. But when Miss Becker entered through the back door, there was a struggle in the dining room. Miss Becker obtained control of the knife, and as Mr. Brackman was attempting to flee, Avery Becker stabbed Mr. Brackman in the back. And that is what happened on Friday, March 6, 2020.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Cross-examination, Ms. Cobby?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon again, Detective Markowitz.
Good afternoon.
I would like to talk about the Ring security footage that you observed from Mackenzie Brackman's home.
Sure, we can discuss that.
The security footage that you observed from Mackenzie Brackman's home shows the person wearing a hoodie, mask, and gloves.
It indeed does, yes. Their identity was concealed so that the cameras couldn't pick up. But the average height and build was exactly like Avery Becker, and that is the important part of this footage. It also showed where...
I would now like to ask you about the text messages that you acquired from Alex Fuentes. You interviewed Alex Fuentes during the investigation?
Yes, I did. And as I mentioned, hopefully you were paying attention, but she gave me the biggest lead in the case, as I did say.
Yes. Alex Fuentes had received texts from Avery Becker.
Yes, that is true, for sure. These texts were the communications that Avery Becker was planning to trash and burglarize Mr. Brackman's home.
You asked for Alex Fuentes' phone to view the texts.
Yes, I did.
They didn't have their phone with them.
It is very normal for a person to be nervous when they're talking with the cops, and she did unfortunately leave her phone behind. However, I was able to get the evidence that I needed.
Because Alex Fuentes left her phone behind, you acquired the text messages through screenshots that they sent to you from their home?
They show the ample evidence that I needed the communications. I am also an expert in cell phone technology, so I'm pretty sure that these were legitimate.
I will now be moving on to the cell tower records that you the data that you collected from the day of the murder. You received cell tower records of Avery Becker's phone from the day of the murder.
Yes, that's what I was talking about 3 minutes prior for about 5 minutes. So yeah.
Yes, thank you. The records showed that the cell phone had received several texts and phone calls that day.
Yes, indeed. Those texts and phone calls were what allowed me to obtain those lovely CDRs that allowed me to place the location of Avery Becker at almost any given time on her way to Mr. Brackman's house to burglarize it, in which a murder ensued.
Thank you. Were any of the texts or calls made to Avery Becker's phone responded to?
They were not. Avery Becker clearly had a purpose. She was angry, feisty.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Graham?
Excuse me, Your Honor, could you repeat that?
Any examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Detective.
Go ahead.
Examining these ring camera footage, what makes you think it was Avery Becker?
Well, the average height and build show is exactly Avery Becker's build, plus all the other evidence adds on to that and confirms the cell tower records, the
Objection, Your Honor,
motive.
asked and answered.
Response to the asked and answer objection, Mr. Graham?
Your Honor, as this was mentioned on cross, it is the purpose of redirect to clarify questions that could have been confused for the jury.
Well, her objection is that you've already asked him on direct examination. You agree or disagree with that?
Excuse me, Your Honor, could you restate the question?
Sure. The objection was that your question has already been asked and answered on direct examination. Do you agree with that or not?
Your Honor, I do not believe this was explicitly asked on direct.
I'll let you clarify it. The objection is overruled.
Detective, what makes you definitively think it was Avery Becker on the stand? Or in the ring camera video?
Yes, so like I was saying, there's an average height and build, and that points to Avery Becker, as well as all the other overwhelming evidence, such as the motive, and yeah.
And Detective, using your cell phone tower analysis and data collection, is it definitive that it was Avery Becker at Mr. Brackman's house at the day of the murder?
Yes, these cell phone records place Avery Becker at Mr. Brackman's home at the time of the murder.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Your cell phone data analysis shows the location of the phone, correct?
It shows which tower was pinged on any given communication, as well as the antenna. This is very precise, as phones cover a relatively small area, and where else is there to go? She clearly communicated intent to go to Mr. Brackman's home, so coupled with the cell phone records that would place her in that very specific vicinity, it is certain.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Would the prosecution please call their next?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
All right, Mr. Beck, you've already been Von Alchinus.
Your Honor, before I begin, may I request a brief time check?
Prosecution timer, can you give him a time check?
Yes, Your Honor, 14 minutes and 54 seconds left.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Would you please state your name for the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Kyle Kuzak.
And why were you called into court today?
I was called into court today to give y'all my to walk y'all through my analysis of what happened the day Mackenzie Brackman was murdered.
And what do you do for a living, Mr. Kuzak?
I'm a CSR investigator with the city of Denver for the past 3 years.
And what did you do to become a crime scene reconstruction investigator?
I took multiple 40-hour classes in things like blood spatter analysis, crime scene documentation, crime scene photography, all of these little parts of the CSR bubble that allows me to do what I've done.
Thank you. Pursuant to Rule 702, the prosecution would now like to enter Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, crime scene documentation, blood splatter analysis, and crime scene photography due to his extensive 40-hour training in each course and his 19 years of being a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor.
Which?
Good afternoon.
You object? You want to voir dire?
I would like to voir dire, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
You're offering your opinions to the jury as a crime scene reconstruction investigator, right?
Of course.
Based in part on your review of the physical evidence, right?
I review evidence, I review witnesses, and all of these allow me to do what I do.
Have you ever taken a course in blood splatter analysis?
Yes.
But the truth is, you're not a certified forensic scientist, correct?
I'm not a certified forensic scientist.
And you're only a
certified
civilian
physiologist.
employee of the Denver Police Department and not a police officer, right?
I'm not a police officer. No, I'm a CSO investigator.
And the truth is, you've only been working at the DPD for 3 years, right?
3 years is a long time.
And you're aware that Detective Jordan Markowitz has been working with the DPD as a homicide detective for 7 years, correct?
Yes. 7's bigger than 3, but 3's still big.
And you believe that some of Van Owen's conclusions fall outside of your area of expertise.
I believe some of his conclusions fall outside, but the ones that fall inside I will be commenting on.
So you're not going to be commenting on the conclusions that fall outside.
For example, I believe Van Owen's comments on the map of the phone. I will not be commenting on that because, why, that is Mr. Markowitz's expertise.
Thank you. Your Honor, I object to Kyle Kuzak being certified as an expert witness on the grounds of a lack of experience with the nature of the crime.
Mr. Bonocenis, did you want to respond?
Yes, Your Honor. As my witness has stated before, crime scene reconstruction is crucial in every crime, and they have 19 years of experience and have taken the required courses.
The court's going to find that the witness is qualified by education, training, and experience. You'll be allowed to do so. You may continue with your direct examination.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Kuzak, now let's just move on over to the general process of a crime scene reconstruction investigator. So, do you do anything specific to conduct your research?
Why, yes, I do. I follow a 5-step method that I've nailed down before. I examine the evidence that I take from the crime scene. I bring that back to the lab, organize it, I construct a hypothesis of what could have happened the day of the crime, and then I present this hypothesis in a flowchart.
And Mr. Kuzak, if I placed your in-depth flowchart in front of you, would you recognize it?
Why, yes, I would.
Your Honor, permission to show the court Exhibit 17.
Go ahead.
Mr. Kuzak, is this an accurate copy of your flowchart?
Why, yes, it is.
Pursuant to Rule 901, the pictures have been identified and authenticated, and I'd now like to submit them into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, objection for relevancy.
What's your response?
Your Honor, this is relevant because it's showing Mr. Kuzak's mapping out of the situation and letting the jury and everyone else understand what truly happened to Mr. Brackman.
Do you want to reply, Mr. Corain?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. 17 will be admitted. The objection on relevance will be overruled.
Thank you. So now let's talk about what happened on the day of the murder on your flowchart here. So what's that on the left, the blue column outline?
The blue column outlines what happened when the perpetrator went to Mr. Brackman's household. The perpetrator traveled to the residence, approached with the intent of property damage, tried the front door, finding it locked, entered through the side gate, and then tested the rear door for access.
And what about that middle column with the green and the turquoise?
The green and turquoise column shows what happened when the intruder entered the household. The intruder entered the residence, entered through the kitchen back door, and then the timeline can split here. Either Mr. Brackman, the victim, was alerted by an e-notice on his phone, or was just alerted another way. Either way, Mr. Brackman armed himself with a knife. Mr. Brackman and the intruder encountered in the kitchen and had an altercation.
And what about that last orange and reddish column?
The orange and red column show when the crime of murder was committed. The victim was stabbed. The murderer and the victim ran through the house, creating scuff marks and breaking a plate in the process. The defendant left the door, left through the front door, leaving it open. The victim removed the knife from his body and then bled out from his wounds.
So now the scuff marks that you previously mentioned, is there any evidence of this?
Why, yes, there is. There's a photo of them.
Permission to show, well, would you recognize this photo?
Why, yes, I would.
Permission to show the court exhibit 18.
Go ahead.
Now, Mr. Cusack, are those scuff marks on the right an accurate representation of the scuff marks you previously mentioned?
Why, yes, they are.
Pursuant to Rule 901, the exhibit previously marked as Exhibit 18 has been identified and authenticated, and I'd now like to submit them into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
18 will be admitted.
Thank you. So the scuff marks on the right and Exhibit 9, the broken plate, what do these prove?
The scuff marks show that the altercation started upon entry to the household. The defendant and the victim would have had a scuffle that would have created those with their shoes. As they moved throughout the house, they would have then broken the plate, showing how this was just chaos as it went throughout the building to the front door.
Mr. Cusack, is your interpretation and analysis of this case the only correct outcome?
Based upon the evidence provided to me and my 19 years of experience, this is the correct outcome of what happened when Avery Becker, the defendant, came to Mr. Brackman's residence.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination. Mr. Corain?
Excuse me, could you repeat that question, Your Honor?
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Let's begin with your analysis of the crime scene. So you used photographs of the blood droplets and cast off to determine the chronology of the events in this crime?
Why, yes, those were part of them. I used them to find the angle that the knife was removed and the way that the knife would have been removed and who.
Thank you. And the digital files for the photographs that you used became corrupted and lost at some point after your review.
Why, yes, when they reached the lab, I believe, they corrupted themselves.
To your knowledge, the file corruption occurred after your review, and the files are now inaccessible.
Why, yes, but I was still able to use them for my review.
So, moving on to the scuff marks, you use scuff marks to support your theory that there wasn't a surprise attack by the intruder.
Why, yes, I used the scuff marks to show how there was a scuffle when the intruder and the victim encountered in the kitchen.
But it's clear that you can't carbon date scuff marks to see how old they are.
Why, no, but I believe Brackman had the day off when he was murdered. He surely would have cleared up 6 ugly scuff marks in his kitchen.
And there's no before and after pictures of the scuff marks.
Why, no, there's just the one image. Why would we have after images?
So there's no proof that the scuff marks were made during the murder.
Why, no, we did not take pictures of Mr. Brackman's house before he was murdered.
And you've assumed that the scuff marks were made during the murder.
It matches well up with the other murders that I've seen.
On the murder weapon, you theorized that the ring app alerted Mr. Brackman to the intruder and he grabbed a knife from the knife block to defend himself.
Why, yes, I believe that Mr. Brackman grabbed the knife from the knife block and that he also could have been alerted by the e-notice on his phone.
But the murder weapon is an entirely different brand of knife from the ones in the knife block.
That doesn't mean it can't come from the knife block.
That's not what I was asking. I was just asking for you to confirm.
Why, yes, the murder weapon is a different brand, but that still does not mean it can't come from the knife block.
And you call this a straightforward home invasion crime.
Why, yes, I mean, this matches up with other ones.
But unlike other ones, you weren't able to recreate all event segments or place all of the evidence.
I'm not usually able to perfectly create every segment. Sometimes there are different paths that things can come down in. But this one is what I
Thank
believe
you.
is correct.
So there were some unanswered mysteries.
Namely, whether it was alerted by e-notice or knocking at the door.
And you said you'd prefer if you had more physical evidence.
Why, yes, I would prefer that, but this is sufficient.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, a very brief redirect. So, Mr. Kuzak, these scuff marks, have you recognized anything like this in your former years of being a crime scene reconstruction investigator?
Why, yes, in my 19 years, I've found other home invasions show these scuff marks upon entry.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, the witness can step down. Would the prosecution please call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes.
All right. Alex, you've already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Williamson.
Good afternoon, Ms. Cifuentes.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name for the court?
My name is Alex Cifuentes.
Ms. Cifuentes, why are you here today?
I'm here today because I'm good friends with the defendant, Avery Becker, and I also knew Coach Brockman. He was my mock trial coach.
And how did you fit into the mock trial team?
I took my role in mock trial very seriously. It's one of my favorite things to do, and just talking about it brings a huge smile on my face.
All right, let's first talk about Avery Becker's time on the mock trial team. Can you tell us about your relationship with Ms. Becker?
Yeah,
Objection asked
Avery,
and answered.
Objection was asked and answered.
Yes, Your
Response?
Honor.
Your Honor, we have not asked this question yet.
I agree. Overruled.
I will repeat the question. Can you tell us about your relationship with Ms. Becker?
Avery and I were really good friends and teammates, and Avery was actually the one who introduced me to mock trial when I was a freshman and convinced me to try out.
And how was Ms. Becker as a teammate?
Avery was really good at making things up on the fly, but it always left the team on the tip of their toes, not really knowing what was going to happen in court. And also, Avery came late and was unprepared to most practices.
And how did Mr. Brockman deal with this?
Coach Brockman and Avery always had a frustrating relationship, and at some
Objection
point their relationship.
speculation.
I'm sorry, what?
Objection speculation, Your Honor. I don't believe that Alex is qualified to testify to Brackman and Avery's relationship.
The response, or I'm sorry, the objection is speculation. What's your response, Ms. Williamson?
Your Honor, Ms. Cifuentes spent a considerable amount of time with Ms. Becker and the victim, which means I believe that Ms. Cifuentes would have knowledge of this relationship.
I'll allow it. The objection's overruled.
Would you continue to tell us how Mr. Brockman dealt with this?
Well, at some point, their relationship reached a boiling point. It was after Avery came late to practice again. And it was a long, hard week of mock trial, and Coach Brockman demoted Avery to the B team.
Wow, and did she remain on the B team?
No, she didn't. She somehow convinced Taylor Perkins, another member of the team,
to drop out, which really shocked me since it was Taylor's last year on mock trial. But this forced Coach Brockman to bring Avery back up to the A team so that we could compete in regionals.
And did the problems continue once Miss Becker was back on the A team?
They did.
Could you give us an example?
Well, after regionals, I remember there was an argument between Coach Brockman and Avery, and I don't really know exactly what happened, but Avery got so visibly infuriated and stormed out of practice with a Sharpie in hand, or what I visibly saw was a Sharpie, and wrote Worst Attorney Award across the hood on Coach Brockman's Porsche.
And how did you know this was the permanent marker?
Well, it was the Sharpie that we used to write on our trial ideas down on the easel, and there's no way a dry erase marker could be there.
Well, how did Mr. Brockman react to with the vandalism?
He kicked Avery off of the team and was really shocked and kind of angry about it.
Well, once Miss Becker was off the team, did she ever contact you?
She texted me and asked me to do a favor for her.
If you saw images of these text messages again, would you be able to identify them?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, permission for the witness to view Exhibit 14.
Go ahead.
Mr. Moore, could you pull up Exhibit 14, please? Could you identify this for the court, Ms. Fuentes?
These are the screenshotted text messages of me and Avery.
Your Honor, at this time, we move the identified and authenticated Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor, I object that these text messages are hearsay, given the fact that they were not authenticated by the police during the investigation, so they do not fall under the hearsay objection of being a business record.
Your Honor, could you repeat that?
What's your response to the hearsay objection?
Your Honor, this is an exception to hearsay, as it is a statement of a party opponent.
And Ms. Saros, your point is that they weren't able to tell who typed the statements?
Yes, Your Honor, these text messages are unauthenticated, and as such, they should not be admitted into evidence.
And so what's your response to that point of the objection, Ms. Williamson?
Your Honor, the police took the text messages. Ms. Fuentes offered to bring in her own phone, but they asked her for screenshots and.
But you need to stick to the evidence. So what's the evidence that establishes who wrote the statements on the text message?
Ms. Fuentes, you can says that this is from Ms. Becker. This is what the police agreed with, and.
Okay, I'm going to sustain the objection on hearsay grounds, but you can ask your witness some further questions to determine how she knows who it is that wrote those text messages. If in fact they were written by the defendant, then they would be a statement of a party opponent and they would be admissible. But the objection is sustained. 14 is not admitted.
All right. Mr. Fuentes, or Your Honor, would I be able to ask further questions to possibly build foundation?
Absolutely.
All right. Mr. Fuentes, how would you be able to know that these text messages were from Ms. Becker?
Objection, well, in proper opinion from a lay witness, Your Honor, the witness is not qualified to authenticate a text message.
Overruled.
Ms. Fuentes, could you go on to answer?
Well, in the first part of the text message, it said it was Avery, so I believed it to be Avery.
And
I had no other reason to believe it wasn't.
And Ms. Fuentes, what was the name in the contacts on the screenshots?
Avery Becker.
And these are in fact, and is this the same number that you would previously text Ms. Becker with?
It was, yes.
All right, Your Honor, at this time, we would like to retry to move the identified and authenticated Exhibit 14 into evidence.
Ms. Saros, you stand on your objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
Court's going to find that sufficient foundation has been laid to establish that the statements were made by the defendant. Therefore, it is the statement of a party opponent. It is admissible, and 14 is admitted.
All right. Mr. Fuentes, could you tell us the context of this conversation with Ms. Becker?
So Avery was asking me to do a favor, which was to talk to Coach Brockman and see if I could convince him to let Avery back on the team.
And did you?
I did, but I told Avery that I didn't think Coach Brockman would agree with me, and he didn't.
All right, Ms. Fuentes. All right, Ms. Fuentes. Mr. Moore, could you point out the last 3 gray messages on the screen? And Ms. Fuentes, could you read aloud these messages?
Yes. Well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house. I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it. That'll show him.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Moore. You may remove Exhibit 14. Ms. Fuentes, afterwards, were you contacted by anyone regarding this case?
Yeah, I got a call from the detective and I told him about the screenshots and they called me in for a full interview.
And what did they want specifically from you?
They wanted me to provide the conversation, but I left my phone charging at home and I offered to bring it in the next day, but they told me screenshots would suffice.
All right, and did you contact anyone prior to being contacted to about these text messages?
No, unfortunately, and I really regret not contacting anyone about this, but never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that someone I was friends with could have done anything like this.
And do you see it differently now?
I do. I see it. It's clear to me that Avery told me what she was going to do, then went and did it, and then even took it a step further and killed Coach Brockman.
I apologize, Your Honor. Could you repeat that? I'm having trouble hearing you.
Oh, so you posed an objection. I didn't hear what it was.
I objected on the grounds of speculation, as Alex Fuentes was stating that Avery Becker went and broke into Mackenzie Brockman's house and killed him.
All right, Ms. Williamson, what's your response to the speculation objection?
Your Honor, Ms. Fuentes is telling the court how she interpreted the text messages that she received.
Permission to respond, Your Honor?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, as a lay witness, I don't believe that Alex Fuentes is qualified to give their opinion on what happened in a crime scene.
With you, the objection is sustained. Who was last answer?
Your Honor, may you repeat that? You're cutting out a bit.
Sorry. The objection is sustained, and the witness's last statement will be stricken.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, we have no further questions.
Okay. Cross-examination, Ms. Soros?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Fuentes.
Good afternoon.
Let's begin with your relationship with Avery Becker. You had your frustrations with Avery.
I did. I did get frustrated with Avery sometimes. Everyone gets frustrated with people.
Mm-hmm. And you believe that you worked harder than her?
I was very serious about my role. I would do all of my assignments the day of. What I thought I did, I was a hard worker for mock trial.
And you believe that you were more of a hard worker than she was?
I think I was.
Okay, and you believe that the team was better off without Avery?
I do, but it's more for our mental health too, and just for the benefit of the team. We always were in a constant state of anxiety because we didn't know what Avery was going to do in court. It really put a strain on a lot of us.
Thank you. And you were excited about the larger role that you would have with Avery off the team?
I was going to get a larger role anyways next year, but because Avery was going to leave, but yes.
Okay, and moving on to your interview at the police station, you didn't have your phone with you when you went to the police station to be questioned?
I left it charging at home.
Mm-hmm. And you only sent screenshots of your conversation between you and Avery Becker?
I offered to bring my phone in, but I did what the police wanted me to and just send them screenshots.
And you never showed your phone to the detective?
I didn't, no.
And you don't have that phone anymore?
My battery, it just never held any battery, and so I traded it in.
Mm-hmm. And finally, let's discuss your interaction with Avery at the Fry Shack. You played a game on Avery's phone while you were there?
I did play a new game on Avery's phone.
And you had her phone to play this game right before she left?
I did. I gave it back, though.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Examination.
Your Honor, no redirect necessary.
All right. Further evidence for the prosecution?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
I think we just lost our judge.
Are we just gonna wait?
Sure, we can wait.
Yeah, we'll just wait. He'll be back in just a moment. This kind of happens around this time of day for some reason with the courthouse.
Your Honor, can you hear me?
I could not. I apologize. I lost the internet connection. You're able to hear me now, though, Ms. Williamson?
Yes, Your Honor.
Right. I apologize. Apparently,
No.
my internet connection in the courthouse is not stable. At this time, would the defense like to present any evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Avery Becker to the stand.
All right. Ms. Becker, you've already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Covey.
Good afternoon, Avery.
Good afternoon.
Can you please state your full name and spell your last for the jury?
My name is Avery Becker, Becker.
Do you know why you are here today?
Unfortunately, yes, I'm being completely wrongfully accused of killing my coach.
Are you a student?
I was a senior last year at Colorado High School, or CHS for short.
Were there any activities that you participated at CHS?
The one thing I really loved to do at school was mock trial. I was in it all 4 years with my best friend.
What was the name of your best friend?
My best friend's name is Taylor Perkins.
How was your relationship with Mackenzie Brackman?
Mackenzie Brackman was my coach, and I respected him a lot, but we had a bit of a rocky relationship.
Why did you have a rocky relationship?
We tended to disagree on some things. He always said I didn't work enough.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
Your Honor, the declarant is unavailable.
And so
this statement is admissible.
Okay. Can you elaborate a little bit more for me?
Mackenzie Brackman is a declarant, and he unfortunately passed away, so that makes this admissible.
Can you give me a rule or an analysis?
No, Your Honor, but I can re-ask the question.
Okay, the objection will be sustained. Go ahead.
Why did you not get along with Mr. Brackman?
We had a bit of a tendency to disagree. I wouldn't follow scripts, just things like that to do with the team.
I would now like to talk about the time leading up to regionals. Did anything out of the ordinary happen in the time leading up to the regional tournament?
About a month before the regional tournament, Mr. Brackman got super mad at me and moved me down to B team.
Did you try to get back onto A team?
I tried to talk with him, but he wouldn't let me back on, unfortunately.
How did your friend Taylor respond to you being moved to a different team?
Taylor and I are super, super tight. The only reason
Relevance, how Taylor Perkins reacted to the situation does not go to the truth of the matter. Your Honor, I think I speak for myself at least. Could you please restate the question? I don't think, or the answer. I don't think we heard you.
What's your objection?
Your Honor, my objection is relevance.
Your response to the relevance objection, Ms. Covey?
Your Honor, Taylor Perkins was on the team with Avery Becker, and they would have probably minded that Avery had moved teams.
So it would relate to what material fact? Motive or bias?
I can lay more foundation, Your Honor.
No, I'm just asking you. Is that what you're trying to get at with the question?
I was going to ask the question in order to explain why Taylor later left the team in order to let Avery onto a team.
Okay, I'll allow that. Objection's overruled.
I'm going to re-ask the question. How did your friend Taylor respond to you being moved to a different team?
So Taylor and I were super tight. We've been best friends forever. And she didn't care much about the team, so she offered herself to step down to B team, so I would be moved back up.
Did you get put back on A team after Taylor stepped down?
Yes, I did. Mr. Brackman was kind of forced to at that point.
How did the regional tournament go after you joined the team?
It actually went really well.
Relevance?
The objection is relevance. Why is it relevant?
Your Honor, I'm trying to lead into the next topic that I will be talking about, which is the time after the regional tournament. And I wanted to address that the tournament went well.
And then how does that relate to anything with respect to the issues in this trial?
It's going to talk about the events of the Tuesday night after regionals, which resulted in conflict between Coach Brackman and Avery Becker.
I'll allow it. It's relevant. Overruled.
I'll re-ask the question. How did the regional tournament go?
The regional tournament went super well. I was really happy to have that as one of my final tournaments. I actually won the Best Attorney Award.
Moving on to the time after regionals. Where were you the Tuesday night after regionals?
Tuesday after regionals, we had practice to talk about it.
What was the team doing during practice that day?
We were talking about what we did well at the tournament and what we could have improved on.
Were you using any tools to discuss what you did well and didn't do well?
Personally, I was at the board. I had a dry erase marker in hand and I was about to start the discussion.
What happened after that?
So Mr. Brackman came into practice and I really thought he'd be happy for me, but he started yelling at me again and I just left practice. I couldn't deal with it that day.
What happened after you left the practice?
When I left practice, I still had the dry erase marker in my hand, which unfortunately I later found out was a Sharpie, and right there was his car.
What happened after you wrote on his car?
I looked at the car and I was just terrified. I didn't know what I had done. It was such a huge mistake. And then Mr. Brackman walked out to invite me back to practice.
What happened when he walked out?
He started yelling at me again because of the car, which was much more serious than anything we had ever experienced together. And he kicked me off the team entirely.
What did you do after getting kicked off of the team that night?
All I could do was go straight home and just cry about it with my mom. I didn't know what to do.
What happened the day after?
So I went to Mr. Brackman's office, really set on apologizing to him. If there's anything I could do, it was apologize. but his secretary wouldn't even let me in.
Did you ever get to apologize to him?
No, he got murdered before I even got to apologize.
I'm really sorry. I would now like to ask you about the day before March 6th. Are you okay with that?
Of course.
Where were you the day before the murder?
I was with my best friend, Taylor Perkins. We were at the Fry Shack nearby.
Did you see anyone familiar at the Fry Shack?
There was a bunch of other mock students there, but I remember Alex Cifuentes.
What is your relationship with Alex Cifuentes like?
We've been teammates for a few years, but I don't know her that well. We're more of acquaintances than anything.
What did you do at the Fry Shack?
I was just there with Taylor. Again, I love her so much. We were just hanging out, just getting food and playing on my phone.
What else did you do that day?
After the Fry Shack, we walked around the mall for a while, and then we went home.
I would now like to discuss the day of the murder, March 6th. What happened on the morning of March 6th?
So in the mornings, I usually pick up Taylor on our way to school. And I kind of had a weird feeling that I didn't have my phone with me. But when I went to pick her up, she also noticed that I didn't have my phone with me, that I hadn't for the last night.
What did you do when you noticed that you didn't have your phone?
Both of us had our first periods off and not much to do that day, so we just decided to skip school to look for it.
Did you ever text Alex Cifuentes?
Again, Alex and I don't know each other that well.
Objection, Your Honor. The objection is vague. Or the question is vague, Your Honor.
Overruled.
Okay, I'm going to restate the question. Did you ever text Alex Cifuentes?
Alex and I don't really get along that well and don't know each other that well, so no, I never did. And I didn't have my phone anyways.
All right, I'm going to move on to Blair Rollins. Do you know who Blair Rollins is?
Blair was in the mock trial team too, but they were much tighter with Alex.
Are there any similarities between you and Blair?
Honestly, Blair and I do look pretty similar. If you can't see our faces, our height and build is pretty much the same. You could easily confuse us.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Cross-examination, Mr. Graham?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, you attend Colorado High School, correct?
I was a senior last year, yes.
And isn't it true you were on the high school mock trial team for 4 years?
All 4.
Now, Mr. Brackman was your coach, correct?
He was a pretty good one too.
But, Ms. Becker, didn't you call him the worst coach in the state?
Whenever I said those things about him, I
Ms.
didn't
Becker,
mean
I'm
it.
not asking for an explanation. I'm simply asking, did you say that about Mr. Brackman?
Yes, I did. I wish I didn't.
Now, Mr. Brackman said that you were lazy, correct?
He did say that to me multiple times.
And didn't he say you didn't put in the work?
Yeah, I wish he respected me more and I wish we had a better relationship.
And didn't Mr. Brackman think you needed to work harder?
A little bit, yeah.
Ms. Becker, is your testimony today that Avery or Taylor, your best friend Taylor Perkins, left or decided to move to B team so you could be put on A team?
Yes, she did do that for me and I'm very thankful for her.
Just to clarify, Ms. Becker, she said that she would like to move to B team so you would be put onto A team, correct?
Yes, she decided I would be better for A team than her.
Trial Tech, would you please display Avery Becker's witness statement to the court? Page 34, Trial Tech, please. Actually, Trial Tech, would you please display
Your Honor, objection, relevance.
Well, he hasn't gotten into the question. Overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Graham.
Now, if you would please turn your attention to line 60 or line 66. You'll see there in the witness statement, it is saying that Mr. Brackman was saying to Avery Becker that Taylor had quit the team and not simply left A team to go to B team. Now, I would like to go back to questioning, Ms. Becker. Isn't it true Mr. Brackman considered Taylor Perkins to be your sidekick?
We were super tight. I guess that's how he perceived us.
And isn't it true that excuse me, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, isn't it true Mr. Brackman criticized your work?
Yeah, we always disagreed a little bit about my work ethic.
And didn't Mr. Brackman say he wasn't surprised you got your little crony to bail you out of B team?
He was pretty angry at me, but again, Taylor decided to quit herself. I didn't force her into anything.
Ms. Becker, isn't it true you vandalized Mr. Brackman's car?
Yeah.
And isn't it true you vandalized it with a permanent marker?
At the time, I thought it was a dry erase marker, but yes, it was permanent.
Ms. Becker, what did you write on his car?
I wrote worst attorney award on his car in a moment of stupidity and just distress, really.
So now, once Mr. Brackman kicked you off of both teams, isn't it true you told your mom you'd get back at Mr. Brackman if it was the last thing you did?
Absolutely not. All I could do was cry to her. Why would I say that?
Ms. Becker, it's your testimony today that you did not tell your mom you'd get back at Mr. Brackman if it was the last thing you did?
No.
Child Tech, would you please display the witnesses, excuse me, Your Honor. Ms. Becker, do you remember making a sworn statement before today's case?
Yes, I do.
And you are aware you can change your statement at any time leading up to the court date, correct?
Yes, I am aware.
Child Tech, would you please display Ms. Becker's witness statement to the court, specifically line 105?
If I ever said that about Mr. Brackman, I didn't mean it.
Now, Charles Lake, would you please highlight on line 04 where Ms. Becker's sworn statement specifically says, I told her I would get back at him if it was the last thing I did. Ms. Becker, you do understand that is your sworn statement, correct?
I do. I'm really sorry. I forgot I ever said that.
Thank you, Trial Tech. Ms. Becker, I'd like to talk about March 6th. Isn't it true you and Taylor Perkins ditched school that day?
We did. We were looking for my phone.
And isn't it true you ditched school to look for your, I'd like to turn your attention to Exhibit 14. Trial Tech, please display that to the court. This is a screenshot of a conversation between your phone and Alex Cifuentes' phone, once the exhibit is displayed. This is a screenshot between your phone and Avery Becker's phone, correct?
That is a screenshot that Alex screenshotted.
But at the top, it shows your name, correct?
That is my name, yes.
Trial Tech, would you please highlight the fourth grade bubble or the third grade bubble on that screen? Ms. Becker, would you please read what that says to the court?
Well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's going to be really upset when he sees what I do to his house.
At this point, Alex Fuentes says, what are you going to do to his house? Now, Ms. Becker, would you please read the next two texts to the court?
I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it. That'll show him.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions at this time.
Redirect examination, Ms. Gabi?
Yes, Your Honor. Avery, do you regret vandalizing Coach Brackman's car?
Absolutely, with every piece of my heart.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No recross necessary, Your Honor.
can step down. Would the defense please call their next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Taylor Perkins to the stand.
All right. Taylor Perkins has already been sworn. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins. Could you please state your full name and spell your last for the jury?
Taylor Perkins. Perkins.
Thank you. I'd like to start with your education and relationship with Avery Becker. Where did you go to school?
I was a senior at Colorado High School.
Were there any Thank you. Were there any activities that you participated in at school?
I participated in mock trial.
How did you feel about participating in mock trial?
To be honest, I only really joined the team so I could hang out with Avery, my friend.
How prepared was Avery at mock trial meetings?
She was not very prepared. She didn't put in too much effort.
How did this affect Avery's performance at meetings?
She still always came out on top, and she did really well despite how little she worked in it.
Now, I'd like you to think back to the preparations before the regional tournament last year. Was Avery very prepared for the tournament?
About a month before, Avery was like the most unprepared I've ever seen, and she was always making things up, but she still excelled.
Was there any fallout to Avery's lack of preparation?
Our coach, Mr. Brockman, got really mad, and he demoted Avery to B team. And when I heard about the demotion, I said that the A team would never win without Avery. And it was Avery's senior year too.
Excuse me, was there an objection?
Well, I thought I heard one, but apparently not. You go ahead and continue.
Okay, we'll continue. After you left the team, did Avery continue doing mock trial?
After I left the team,
or my apologies. Did you do anything in response to Brackman's decision?
I left the team. I stepped down from the team in support of Avery, and because of that, they had no choice but to put Avery back on the A team.
And so now, after you left the team, did Avery continue doing mock trial?
Coach Brackman had no other choice but to put her back on A team, and she won a bunch of awards.
What'd you do the Thursday after Avery got kicked off the team?
The day Avery got kicked off the team, she was told to leave, so we went to my house and played games on our phones.
What happened later that evening?
We went to grab something to eat at Fry Shack, and most of the mock trial team came after practice while we were still eating, and Alex Fuentes made Avery mad, so she stormed off to the bathroom, leaving her phone on the table. And that thing was like Avery's third kidney, so her leaving it on the table must have meant she was really mad.
What happened next?
We headed out, and I don't remember if Avery grabbed her phone or not, but we hung out at the mall for a while, and then we went home.
What happened the next morning on March 6th after going to the Fry Shack?
Avery picked me up to my house because she usually picks me up when we both have our first periods, and then we drove to school.
Did you coordinate with her when she picked you up?
I texted her, but she hasn't answered my text that morning. But while we were riding, she told me that she lost her phone, so we went off to go looking for it. And then we did not find it. But I remember the phone was on the table the night before, so we went to check at Fry Shack.
Did anything unusual happen while you were at Fry Shack?
Yeah, a few people from the mock trial team showed up.
Was there anything surprising about people from the mock trial team showing up?
Well, they should have been in practice. Brockman never showed up that afternoon and wasn't returning text, so I guess they just left.
What happened later that night?
I found out that our coach, Brockman, had been killed.
Let's talk about your relationship with Blair Rollins. Did you know Blair?
Yeah.
What do you think about them?
Kind of thought they were kind of weird.
As far as you're aware, was Blair Rollins at school on the day of the murder?
As far as I'm aware, Blair Rollins is not at school.
Thank you. Did you go anywhere near Brackman's house that day?
No, of course not.
Awesome. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Williamson?
Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Perkins, you're here today testifying for your best friend, Avery Becker. Is that right?
That is right.
And she's the one who got you involved in mock trial.
Yeah, she is.
And you wouldn't have done it if she hadn't?
No, I just did it to hang out with her.
And Ms. Perkins, even though it was also your senior year in high school, you quit the team so that Ms. Becker could be on the A team. Is that right?
Yeah, I did it in support of Avery, and I didn't really have much care for mock trial anyways, so.
Well, and then when when she was kicked off for vandalizing Mr. Brackman's car, you found this unfair, right?
Yeah, I found it completely unfair. She was one of the best people on the team.
Well, and since you found this unfair, you and Ms. Becker decided to text mock trial members to try to get her back on the team. Is that right?
Yeah, we did.
And was that including Alex Fuentes?
Yes, he's part of mock trial.
Right. I would like to briefly talk about Blair Rollins. You stated previously that, never mind. You never in a million years would have guessed Blair Rollins had done it. Is that right?
No, I thought that she seemed like the person most likely to do it.
But before, you had never thought in a million years she would have done it.
No, I wouldn't.
And but this changed after Ms. Becker informed you of Blair Rollins' possible involvement.
Yes.
And this was after you had been contacted about being a witness, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
All right. Moving on to the whereabouts of Ms. Becker's phone. Is your theory that Ms. Becker's phone was stolen before the murder? Is that correct?
Yes, that is my theory.
And from what you observed, Ms. Becker never had her phone out of sight.
No, not until she lost it.
Well, so the day before the murder, when she did leave it at the fry shack, as you say, it must have been odd.
Yeah, of course, but it was a stressful day for everyone. So.
Right, and after Miss Becker stormed out from Alex Fuentes, you say that you wanted to punch Miss Fuentes in the face?
Well, I was angry.
All right. And after the encounter at the fry shack, you then went to the mall. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry, can I object to that question? But not the one you just asked, but that one that was not found in evidence.
I'm sorry. Your objection is to 2 questions ago?
My objection is the question that she said that she would have wanted to punch Alex Fuentes in the face, which she's never said that, and improper character evidence.
That's already sailed. Overruled.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead, Ms. Williamson.
Okay. I will repeat the question. After you were at the fry shack, you then went to the mall with Miss Becker. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so that whole afternoon, Miss Becker never mentioned not having her phone?
No, she didn't.
And it was only the next morning when you both really realized that Miss Becker's phone was missing. Is that correct?
Yeah, after I kept texting her and she wouldn't text back, so we both realized.
And yet you claimed that Miss Becker's phone was like her third kidney?
Yeah, it was weird to see her lose it.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right.
I'm sorry, could you repeat what you said, Your Honor? I'm sorry, I can't hear your microphone.
Ms. Williamson, can you hear me?
It's very faint sometimes.
Redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sorry.
Did you ever say that you wanted to punch Alex Fuentes to anyone?
Yes.
I'll repeat the question again. Did you ever say that you wanted to punch Alex Fuentes to anyone?
No, I didn't.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
Yes, Your Honor, if I get a minute. Okay, Miss Perkins, is it your statement today that you never said that you thought about punching Miss Fuentes in the face?
No, I never said that to anyone.
And do you recall making a statement under oath previously?
Yes.
Mr. Moore, could you please pull up Ms. Perkins' statement on page 42? All right, Miss Perkins, could you, or Mr. Moore actually, could you first highlight on line 66 where it says, "I wanted to punch Alex in the face." Is this what you previously stated, Ms. Perkins?
That's what I read in, yes.
And you are aware that you had up until the trial to change your statement?
Yes.
All right, no further questions, Your Honor, and Mr. Moore, thank you.
All right. The witness can step down. Would the defense please call the next witness?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense would like to call Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right, Professor, you've already been sworn. Go ahead, Ms. Soros.
Good afternoon, Professor Van Owen.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your full name and spell, could you please state your full, could you please state your full name and spell your last for the jury?
Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
What is your profession?
I'm a private investigator and a professor.
And where do you teach?
I teach at CU Denver.
What subjects do you teach there?
I teach a course on police practices and social justice.
Could you elaborate further on your areas of teaching expertise?
Yes, I teach courses on use of force, forensic evidence techniques, and police investigation tactics.
And moving on, what experience do you have in the field of private investigation?
I've been a private investigator for over 5 years now, and in that time I've consulted on over 100 cases.
Have you testified in front of a court previously?
Yes, I avail myself regularly.
And could you elaborate further on your time as a courtroom witness?
I have been an expert in crime scene reconstruction 8 times, cell tower analysis 5 times, and general police investigation tactics 12 times, and so on.
Do you have any other qualifications related to your specialty?
I have a master's degree in criminal justice.
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 702, in light of Professor Blake Van Owen's education, experience, training, and specialized knowledge, I would like to offer Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, general police investigation, and forensic evidence techniques.
Any objection or voir dire?
No objections at this time, Your Honor, but permission to conduct a brief voir dire of the witness.
Go ahead.
So, Professor, you were only with the police force for 9 months, is that correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true you haven't been in the police system for around 15 years?
Yes.
And you haven't been certified in any of their more recent tactics, correct?
Objection vague.
Overruled.
Do you want me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
You haven't been certified in any of their more recent tactics, is that correct?
I've been certified before, and I haven't felt the need to recertify myself.
So you're basing all your police tactic experience from 15 years ago, based off of only 9 months of actual hands-on experience, is that correct?
I suppose so.
Your Honor, I have no objections to Professor Van Owen testifying as an expert in crime scene reconstruction or cell phone tower data analysis, but request the professor may not testify, or sorry, may not, sorry, one second, may not provide expert testimony in relation to general police investigation tactics, as the defense hasn't provided evidence of sufficient training or expertise in this field.
And what's the response to the objection regarding police tactics, investigation tactics? Ms. Saros?
Yes, Your Honor. All of the reasons that the opposing counsel brought up as to why Professor Blake Van Owen should not be an expert in general police investigation were related to their time as a practicing police officer on the streets, and I don't believe that investigation would be the same as working out as a I apologize, I'm struggling to find the word, but working out as a police officer that works on the streets. Additionally, we did lay foundation for them working in investigation, as they've been a private investigator for years.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection. I'm going to find that the witness is qualified to testify as an expert in those three areas, and she'll be allowed to do so. Please continue, Ms. Saros.
Your Honor, may I ask a quick clarifying question?
Sure.
I believe I tried to admit Professor Van Owen as an expert in 4 areas. Did my microphone perhaps cut out?
Or maybe my brain did. Tell me the 4 areas.
The 4 areas were crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, general police investigation, and forensic evidence techniques, Your Honor.
I think I missed the forensic evidence techniques, and I did not hear an objection to that area of expertise. Mr. Von Elschinus?
I did not object to that, Your Honor.
All right, so 4 areas she's qualified to testify as an expert. I apologize.
No worries. Thank you, Your Honor. Okay. So where did you begin your investigation of this incident?
I began by reviewing the police reports, the crime scene reconstruction done by Kyle Cusack, the cell tower reports, and the evidence collected by Detective Markowitz.
And what was your perception of these documents?
It appears as though the investigation was rushed. The prosecution's case left me with significant doubt, and there are many areas of the case that seem to be overlooked.
So after your initial review, what did you do next?
I conducted a partial investigation on the areas I believed were overlooked.
Did this change your perception of the initial investigation?
No, it made me even more doubtful.
What specific areas did you investigate?
I looked into the crime scene reconstruction, the photos, and the potential other suspects.
Let's begin with the part of your investigation that focused on the crime scene. Where did you begin this part of your investigation?
I began by looking over the crime scene photos.
Did anything in these images stand out to you?
I noticed that there was little evidence of a physical altercation.
Could you elaborate?
The only apparent evidence of struggle were scuff marks on the floor. And as we know, scuff marks cannot be carbon dated. So we don't know when these scuff marks were made, who they were made by, and just if they were made during the incident.
Did you notice anything else?
The murder weapon was inconsistent with the style and blade dimensions of the knives in the knife block.
Objection, speculation.
Response, Ms. Saros?
Your Honor, my witness is simply testifying to their expertise in crime scene reconstruction. They're simply discussing what they observed in the crime scene.
Okay. I think people need to understand how it is that this witness can make that statement about the match. So I'll sustain the objection, but you can ask further questions that would clarify as to how she would know that, what she did to come to that conclusion.
Yes, Your Honor. When you were reviewing the photos, did anything stand out to you about the murder weapon?
Yes, the photos of the murder weapon, comparing the handle of the blade the handle of the knife of the murder weapon compared to the handles of the knives in the block of knives, they were different.
And did this lead you to any conclusions?
There's a chance that the murderer could have brought their own weapon to the scene, and the prosecution failed to consider this possibility.
Did you make any other observations about the knife?
I noticed that the handle of the knife was designed for the user to hold it in a specific way.
Could you elaborate?
Certain knives, including the one in the center of the case, the handle, the way it's designed is for the user's hands to go over it in a specific way so that the blade is facing away from the user.
And what's the significance of this?
With the grip on the knife, the intruder would have had to stab at a downward angle.
In your expert opinion, what would this mean?
For the intruder to stab Mr. Brackman at a downward angle and still nick his aorta, while they're both standing, the intruder would have had to have been significantly larger than Mr. Brackman.
Going back to your preparation for this case briefly, did you review all of the exhibits before us today?
I did.
I am now going to play the exhibit that has been previously marked as Exhibit 10. I apologize, I'm struggling to get it to load. There we go. Can you describe what you saw in that video?
In that video, I saw someone of a smaller frame in a hoodie, mask, and gloves trying to enter the Brackman residence.
Do you recognize this video?
Yes, I've carefully reviewed it as part of my investigation.
Your Honor, I move to admit what has been previously marked as Exhibit 10 into evidence.
No objections, Your Honor.
10 is admitted.
All right. So, while we're on the topic of Ring doorbells, did anything else stand out to you about this part of the case?
Yes. I myself have a Ring doorbell, and I know that you can turn on and off push notifications. And because we don't have the complete user account records of Mr. Brackman's Ring doorbell, we don't know if he had push notifications turned on or off, which means we don't know if he even saw these notifications or if he went to greet the intruder at the door.
Moving on to the cell tower records, where did you begin this part of your investigation?
I began by looking over the subpoena created by Detective Markowitz.
Based on your expertise, what does the cell tower data tell us about the incident?
At the very most, it tells us that Avery Becker's phone was somewhere near the house at the time of the incident. However, it doesn't tell us that Avery Becker was there.
Can you elaborate?
There's evidence that Becker lost their phone the day before the murder, and another student, Taylor Perkins, confirms that they didn't have the phone on the day of the murder. Perkins and Becker were out looking for their phone at this time.
And did you notice I apologize for the background noise. Did you notice anything else about the cell tower data?
Cell tower data is not remotely like GPS information. Since we don't have the actual phone and we can't look at the GPS date, we don't know if the phone was even near the Brackman residence.
Did you observe anything about the cell tower near Brackman's residence?
The cell tower near the Brackman residence covers a very wide area. And it's also near the Brackman residence is also near a major traffic route. And so the person with the phone that was identified by the cell tower could have just been driving in front of Mr. Brackman's house near the area.
And what about the cell tower near Becker's residence?
The cell tower near the Becker residence what covers a very large area, and so we don't know if the phone was anywhere near the residence.
Did you find any fault in the investigative practices related to the cell tower data?
I find fault in the area that Detective Markowitz only looked at the information of Avery Becker's phone.
What do you believe should have been done instead?
The better practice would have been to examine the numbers of all of the phones collected by the cell tower and to see if any of those users of the phones had any connection to Mr. Brackman. It also would have been smart to look at the cell tower data of Taylor Perkins' phone to confirm Taylor Perkins' alibi.
Did you take any steps in your review to fill in these missing details?
I looked more closely at the call detail records Detective Markowitz obtained.
What did the record show?
For each of the calls that Avery Becker sent out, there was a corresponding call or text from Taylor. And these were relayed by cell tower 1191 antenna 2.
What's the significance of this cell tower?
Antenna 2 covers the mall, and this matches the story that Taylor and Avery were at the mall looking for their phone at this time.
What else did the record show?
Later at 2:10 p.m., the records show that antenna 3 connected with Taylor Perkins' phone at this time for an outgoing call to Avery Becker's phone. And since there's no corresponding record of Becker's phone, it's likely that Becker's phone was deactivated or connected to a different cell tower.
And what area does antenna 3 cover?
Antenna 3 covers the area with the fry shack.
And how is this significant?
Taylor and Avery both confirmed that they were at the fry shack this time.
While we're on the subject of phones, did anything stand out to you about the screenshotted text messages from Alex Cifuentes?
Well, personally, I'm stunned that the police officers just agreed to accept screenshots of the text messages, and that's it.
Why did this stun you?
Well, the police officers have special mobile forensic software. The DPT specifically uses Celebrite, and that allows them to easily obtain all of the information of the phone, including text messages. And so for them just to accept screenshots of text messages just seems very out of character.
In your expert opinion, what's the issue with screenshotting a text message?
Well, screenshots can be easily doctored. We don't know if they're real.
Objection, Your Honor. Objection, Your Honor. Outside the scope of expertise.
Your Honor, this witness is an expert in general police investigation, and the phones are being discussed in reference to the way that they were used in the police investigation.
I agree. Overruled.
Okay, I'm going to re-ask the question. In your expert opinion, what's the issue with using a screenshot of a cell phone?
Like I said, screenshots can be easily doctored. We have no way of knowing if they're real or not.
Moving on from cell phones, did your investigation lead you to any other suspicions?
Yes, in my investigation, I uncovered someone who I believe would have a much stronger motive to kill Mr. Brackman than Avery.
What was this motive?
I think the person who should have been investigated was Blair Rollins.
And what was Blair's motive?
Well, a few months before the murder, Mr. Brackman actually represented Jonathan Rollins in a case where Jonathan Rollins was eventually sentenced to life in prison for murder. And Blair Rollins, and having your father represented by a lawyer and then be eventually sentenced to life in prison, in my personal opinion, is a much stronger motive.
Your Honor.
Objection.
Narrative.
I'll sustain that objection. Got to break up her answer with questions.
Okay. Could you give a brief synopsis of what Rollins' motive would be?
I believe having your father sentenced for life in prison would be a much stronger motive than getting kicked off the mock trial team at your high school.
And what's the significance of Blair in this case?
Well, Blair was close friends with Avery, and their father was represented by Mr. Brackman.
I'm sorry, just to double check, did you say that Blair was close friends with Avery?
Yes.
Okay. What do you believe Blair shows in relation to the investigative practices of this case?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What do you believe that Blair's significance is in relation to the way that this case was handled by the prosecution?
Well, Blair's father was represented by Mr. Brackman, and I think that...
Do we have, Your Honor, permission for the witness to finish her sentence?
No.
Okay.
Out of time.
Thank you.
All right. Cross-examination, Mr. Bonalshinis.
Yes, Your Honor, but before I do, permission to request a time check.
Go ahead.
I have 8 minutes and 7 seconds.
Can you repeat the minute?
Oh, I have 8 minutes and 7 seconds left. I don't know what the other timekeeper has.
8 minutes and 7 seconds. What does the defendant's timekeeper have?
Your Honor, I have 8 minutes and 5 seconds left.
Oh, a 2-second difference. You two need to work on your game. All right. Mr. Bonalshinis, your cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. So, Professor, isn't it true that you quit the police force?
It is.
And isn't it true that you left the police force and law enforcement because you injured a woman of color?
Objection and proper character evidence.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm showing, I'm laying foundation for future questions, showing the professor's bias towards the police force.
Towards what?
The
Towards the police force? Yeah, well, that question doesn't do that. The objection will be sustained.
Professor, isn't it true that you now teach, sorry, let me move on. Professor, isn't it true that you've been involved with some of the cases handled by Detective Markowitz?
Yes.
And isn't it true that you called Detective Markowitz defective?
I believe that Detective Markowitz and
Professor, please, this is a yes or no question.
Objection badgering. Your Honor, the opposing counsel didn't even let my witness get 2 words in before interrupting her.
Overruled.
Okay.
It's cross-examination. Just telling her it's a yes or no question. He's allowed to do that. Go ahead, Mr. Von Elchinis.
Would you like me to restate the question or re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
Isn't it true that you called Detective Markowitz defective?
Yes,
And have you met Kyle Kuzak?
I have.
And Professor, isn't it true that you called Mr. Kuzak egotistical?
Based on my how I perceived Kyle Cusack, I could have thought that, yes.
Thank you. Now I'd just like to move on to your thoughts about the attack itself. You believe this was organized, correct?
Yes.
And you believe there wasn't any struggle?
I believe that there's no evidence of an apparent struggle.
But isn't it true that you weren't actually at the crime scene, Professor?
Yes.
And so you only saw limited photos of the crime scene, is that correct?
To conduct my partial investigation, I used evidence collected by other people.
So just based on this, that evidence, you can't truly know the full state of the household?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Based off of the evidence you've seen, you cannot truly know the entire state of the household, correct?
Objection argumentative.
Overruled.
I only have the photos that I was received, so I didn't get photos of the entire house, no.
Thank you. Now I'd just like to move on to a bit about the scuff marks in Exhibit 18, and the state of the household in Exhibit 9. Permission to show the court Exhibits 18 and 9 back to back.
Go ahead.
Trial Tech, can you put Exhibits 18 and 9 up? Thank you. So Professor, you can confirm those are exhibits, or those are scuff marks in Exhibit 18, correct?
Yes,
Isn't it true that scuff marks could indicate a struggle?
that's true.
And same with the broken plate on the left, that could indicate a struggle, correct?
Yes.
Now I'd like to move on to your your cell phone data analysis. Professor, isn't it true that you didn't obtain the cell tower records on March 5th?
Yes.
And because you didn't get those records on the 5th, you cannot confirm that Avery Becker and Taylor Perkins were at the Fry Shack looking for Becker's phone?
I have the affidavits of both of them, and they both are each other's alibis.
Thank you. Professor, now I'd just like to move on to a bit about Blair and Jonathan Rollins. Blair Rollins is Jonathan Rollins' son, correct?
Yes.
And Jonathan Rollins was sent to prison?
Yes.
So Jonathan's entire court case was recorded, correct?
Yes.
And you believe this recording could somehow prove Avery Becker innocent?
Yes. I think there's evidence to support it.
And did you submit that into evidence today?
I did not.
Great. Now I'd just like to move on to a bit about, about the ring videos. You've reviewed these ring videos, correct?
Yes.
And you would agree that Avery Becker, or sorry, the person in the videos has a similar build to Avery Becker?
Yes.
Finally, I'd just like to discuss your analysis of this case. Isn't it true you conducted your own investigation?
I did conduct my own partial investigation.
And isn't it true that the defense is paying you around $7,000 for your work in this case?
Objection, improper character evidence.
Response?
Your Honor, this is leading to laying foundation to how much money the witness is getting paid to be here, and eventually showing that they have not worked as long as they say they have.
Okay, I'll allow it. Overruled.
In that case, I would like to object on the grounds of relevance.
Overruled.
So, Professor, you make around $225 an hour. Is this correct?
I make the same amount as any other private investigator in my field. So yes, that is the standard price that I receive.
Your Honor, thank you. Your Honor, may the court take judicial notice that 7,000 divided by 225 is 31.
Court take judicial notice of the math.
So, Professor, this means you've only worked 31 hours on this case?
Yes.
And that's just a little under a day and a half, is that correct?
Yes.
And yet you called the police investigation rush, is this correct?
Objection argumentative.
What's your response to that effect?
Your Honor, they previously stated that the police investigation was rushed, and I'm just touching on that, just going back on that.
Permission to respond?
Go ahead.
I would simply ask that the opposing counsel rephrases the question. The way in which it was phrased had a very strong implication behind it.
Well, I agree with your objection that it was argumentative, both in terms of content and tone. But he can ask another question that would get to the same general point. So the objection is sustained.
Thank you.
Professor, you called the police investigation rushed, is this correct?
I believe the police investigation was rushed.
And yet you only spent 31 hours in this case, is this correct?
I conducted only a partial investigation. I wasn't the one that conducted the entire investigation.
This is a yes or no question. Did you or did you not only spend 31 hours on this case?
I spent 31 hours on this case.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions at this time.
All right, and the defense is out of time, so the witness can step down. Any further evidence on behalf of the defense?
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll move to closing arguments for the prosecution.
Your Honor, please report. Your Honor, members of the jury, opposing counsel, my name is Tyler Graham, and I, along with my co-counsel, represented the people of Colorado in today's case. And today, we have shown that nothing provokes vengeance like pride. On Friday, March 6th, 2020, the victim, Mackenzie Brackman, was found dead in the doorway of his home with a stab wound in his upper left back. This fact is undisputed. Mr. Brackman spent his life defending the innocent and teaching the young. And now, his life was cut short by one of the very few people he put his time into. One of the other students Mr. Brackman coached was a student by the name of Alex Cifuentes. Ms. Cifuentes was a friend and former teammate of Avery Becker. And she told us today how Avery Becker's attitude would change from her normal self to rage and anger on the drop of a dime. First, from the prosecution, you heard Detective Jordan Markowitz. He walked us through the details of this investigation and laid out each and every aspect of the crimes committed or accused against Avery Becker. He told you that with the communications Avery Becker's phone received, she had to have been at Mr. Brackman's house at the time of the murder. Then, the prosecution brought Kyle Kuzak to the stand. He testified to how each of these crimes happened, as well as the state the perpetrator left the house in. You heard that scuff marks and broken plates show there was a struggle. And this was clearly a burglary gone wrong and not a premeditated murder. And finally, you heard from Alex Cifuentes. She revealed a first-hand account of the days leading up to the death of Mackenzie Brackman. You heard that Avery Becker was demoted down to her high school's B team before she manipulated her best friend, Taylor Perkins, into leaving A team. Now, Avery Becker told us today that Taylor Perkins was simply moving down to B team. And while this might seem like a minor detail to have just simply forgotten, it begs the question, is there a larger detail she also failed to mention or also was lying about? Now, Mr. Brackman was then forced to put Avery Becker back on A team once Taylor Perkins quit A team. Next, the defendant not only lost their recently acquired spot on A team, which they claimed to be the star of, but they were kicked off both teams entirely. And then they vandalized Mr. Brackman's car in a rage of anger and desperation. Now, at the start of this case, we heard there were missing suspects. Members of the jury, the only person missing here today is Mackenzie Brackman. Opposing counsel claims there was missing evidence. Members of the jury, the only missing evidence is that something that proves Avery Becker is the only missing evidence is something that proves Avery Becker was not the one at the crime scene. Members of the jury, today you've heard a wonderful tale of two students who were supposedly together the entire day. However, we have shown you definitive evidence that Avery Becker was at Mr. Brackman's house at the time of the murder. You've also heard a story from Avery Becker that simply does not add up with Taylor Perkins' story. There are multiple inconsistencies revealed during cross and direct of both of these witnesses. Another inconsistency we heard today was that Taylor Perkins had never even thought about punching Alex Fuentes in the face. However, when her own attorney asked her, she said she had. But then when the attorney asked again, she changed her answer to no. Today, we have shown that nothing provokes vengeance like pride. The prosecution has met our burden of proof, and we've shown beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker was at Mr. Brackman's house at the time of the murder. Members of the jury, today we have proven that two of the three witnesses the defense called to the stand lied under a sworn oath. Today, we've shown that nothing provokes vengeance like pride. And as such, we request that you find Avery Becker guilty of all charges. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Your time is reserved for rebuttal. Closing argument on behalf of the defendant.
Yes,
Ms.
Your Honor.
Saros.
Thank you. Missing suspect, missing evidence, missing motive. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today we have proven that there is not enough evidence to convict Avery Becker of murder in the first degree and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. The prosecution's case is built entirely on assumptions, as they refused to consider other evidence and potential suspects, and instead decided to jump to the simplest conclusion, forcing an innocent girl to face the consequences. First, on the defense, you heard from Avery Becker, who was nothing more than a confused child who had her previous mistakes exploited by the prosecution to paint a false narrative about her character. They exploited the fact that she, in a moment of stress, forgot one sentence that she said to her mother. They exploited that to jump to the conclusion that she was manipulative. They exploited the fact that her friend Taylor decided to quit the team in an act of solidarity. They used this to jump to the conclusion that she's manipulative. Avery wanted nothing more than to apologize to Brackman for her actions at mock trial practice and to make things right. The prosecution continually argued that nothing causes vengeance like pride, but it has been made clear today that Avery was not proud of what she did. Avery enjoyed mock trial, but it was not major enough in her life to be a motive for murder. Next, you heard from Taylor Perkins, who confirmed that Avery was with her all day long on the day of the murder. She also raised suspicions over another student, Blair Rollins, who the prosecution failed to investigate. As the prosecution continually emphasizes vengeance, they refuse to acknowledge the vengeful feelings that could come with a child who had his father sent off to prison. Finally, you heard from Professor Blake Van Owen, who brought the immense prosecutorial negligence in this case to light. She confirmed that Becker was physically incapable of committing the crime in the manner that the prosecution insisted on due to her physical stature, causing the prosecution's entire crime scene reconstruction to fall apart. She also confirmed Avery and Taylor's story, using Perkins' phone records. This new evidence brings to light many gaps in the prosecution's story. The prosecution claimed that the only missing evidence is something that proves that Avery is guilty, refusing to acknowledge the fact that their own witnesses acknowledged that there was missing evidence, the blood splatter photos. As they continue to jump to conclusions, their logical reasoning falls apart. On the prosecution, you heard from Detective Jordan Markowitz, who failed to follow proper investigative procedures throughout this case, simply accepting screenshots of Alex Cifuentes' text messages despite having the technology to obtain proof of their validity. Next, you heard from Kyle Cusack, who built a crime scene reconstruction based on minimal evidence, jumping to numerous conclusions, and he himself admitted to wanting more evidence in this case. Then you heard from Alex Cifuentes, who was greatly influenced by her jealousy of Avery Becker, and who stated that she would benefit from her being out of the picture. Alex Cifuentes was very proud of herself and her hard work, and as the prosecution continually emphasized, pride can influence someone's judgment. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, in this case, the prosecution holds the burden of proof, and today they have failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is guilty. As throughout their lines of questioning, they continually use the word could and may have, it's become clear that they did not achieve this high burden. As a result of the missing suspect, missing evidence, and missing motive, you must rule that Avery Becker is not guilty on charges of murder in the first degree and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. Thank you.
Rebuttal close, Mr. Graham.
Our burden of proof has been met. And then her alibi, and Avery Becker lied on stand. And then her alibi lied on stand. This begs the question, what else are they lying about? Members of the jury, we request you find Avery Becker guilty of all charges. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. So team members, where'd everybody go? There we go. So team members, typically the scoring judges and I would give you some feedback. We've got to start another round in 7 minutes. And I need to make sure that the scoring judges are able to get their scores over to the administrators before we start the next round. So I'm going to give you just a quick summary. Congratulations. You guys did a really nice job. Everybody was very well prepared, well spoken, and frankly, I wish that the real attorneys could handle the technology as well as you guys did. And I see one of the judges, Ms. Saul, who I used to work with and is now a lawyer in actual practice, is smiling about that. I thought you guys did a really nice job using technology and putting together your presentation. I wish that we had the time to give you direct feedback, but I'm going to have to ask everybody to leave the virtual courtroom except for the 3 scoring judges so that they can get their scores turned into admin. Good luck in the next rounds. I hope I see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. I'll be honest with you. I didn't look at the materials about how you guys are supposed to speak scores. I'm just supposed to ask and make sure that before you leave the virtual courtroom that they've actually been submitted and there aren't any problems. Sorry we didn't get to give feedback, but.
Yeah, are we supposed to do them? And thank you, Your Honor. I missed that part as well. Are we supposed to do them electronically, I assume?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. They need them now, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are. Do you know where to get them?
On the login page?
Yeah.
I have the email and I have it filled out by hand and I can just complete it.
Okay, let's see. Trying to help you out with where it is on there. Oh, if you're under, when you just come in when you click in, there's the volunteer brief and the videos. If you go
Yeah.
down, there's a score sheet. If you click that, that's the electronic one, real easy to enter them. They said in the beginning,
Got it. Okay.
if you don't have the names, they'd rather have the scores rather than the names. So if you don't have time to
Okay.
type those in.
Yep, I will do that right now. Thank you.
I've got all mine in.
Yep, mine are in.
And Your Honor, I think I'm actually volunteering for the next one, tooth.
You could probably just stay right where you are.
Yeah,
Okay.
are we going to stay in your courtroom, Your Honor, or are we moving to a different courtroom?
So I've got, oh, actually, you got to move to different courtrooms. So Ms. Sewell, you're going to be in courtroom 2 with Judge Butler. I don't know if you know him. And then Ms. Terry, you're in courtroom 5.
Okay.
With a presiding judge that says TBD. I think they filled it a couple days ago, but I don't remember who that is.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good weekend.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Is anybody still in the room?
Yeah, I am. I gotta wait for
Judge,
you.
I have a question. I'm filling out the form and it says, let me go back to it. It says total points, and I've got a plaintiff total and a defense total. The defense total is higher, but then down below it says the winner is the plaintiff. Should I change that, I take it? Yeah. Got it. Oh, and I don't have I never got the code for the defense team, Your Honor. I have Miss Piggy for the plaintiffs, but I didn't get the defense code.
ZZO.
I could just put in unknown.
No, No, it's Rizzo.
Oh, Rizzo?
Yeah, R-I-Z-Z-O.
Got it. It's submitted.
Okay. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor.